Can they hear me? Can they hear me live out there? Next beat. That ain't the beat I want to do.
Those was wood
another
beats
beat.
right
Another
there.
beat. Nope. Give me another beat. Give me another beat. Nope. That's not it. That's the beat. Turn it up.
Oh, word.
Turn it up. I gotta hear it a little louder. Can you make it louder than my headphones? Turn me up in my headphones. I'm still stuck in the 80s/90s. Lottos, kangaroo boots, nanny ghosts, Velas, jumpsuits and troops, Junos, color Levi's, Bugs Bunny sweaters with the rhinestone ring on it. Fighting and making up the next day. Nobody getting shot. Working to hustle and to get it, a get got. We had love for the streets, our family, our foes, our friends. Respect for the elderly. Pager/payphone, sneaking into Adams Theater. Watching Crush grooving tougher than leather. Hopping gates out the college port to bank out, cause you don't wanna get caught at mom's crib or at Vaughn's crib. Eating funny dinner with the fam. Church every Sunday, 8 o'clock a.m. And even if I fell asleep in the back row or played sick, no matter what, man, I still had to go. 80s, baby. He's a DJ, I'm the rapper. He's a DJ, I'm the rapper. 80s, baby. He's a DJ, I'm the rapper. He's a DJ, I'm the rapper.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. Welcome to episode number 106 of the XCast. I'm your host, Josh Houselander. Joined with me, as always, producer extraordinaire Adam Hernandez. And we got Dorf on the line, too, from Politics of the Empire and the Majors Live fame. It's day 5610 in the search for Tim Chevelday. How's it going, fellas? You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
We got you? All right. How you doing?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just watching Adam fool around with the camera. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, tonight we got kind of we're taking a different little spin here tonight on the first webisode of 2020 XCast. We are starting a little series. It's not going to be every week on the XCast. We're going to skip around a little bit. I haven't fully decided how fast or how hard we're going to hit this series, but we're going to do a little Democratic candidate series. Tonight is the first episode of that. And on this series, we are going to we're going to take each Democratic candidate and we're going to focus on them completely. Nobody else. Just give them each their own show, if you will. Tonight, we are going to pick one of the people who's not exactly a front-runner, not exactly at the bottom of the pack completely either, but not a front-runner. We're going to focus on Tom Steyer, a guy who I kind of picked him first because...
he might be the bottom of the remaining pack.
Perhaps. Well, there's 12 left still. I wouldn't say that he's at the bottom of that pack, but either way, maybe he is. That's up for discussion, and we'll get to that later, where he is exactly in this and what his chances are. But the Tom Steyer thing just kind of fascinated me a little bit, so I thought it might be a good way to, if you will, kind of for us to get our bearings on this little mini series that we're going to do. It's an unlimited series because, as I said, we have 12 candidates that we're going to focus on, but chances that all 12, that some aren't going to drop out before the series is done is pretty good. And I'm not ruling out that, I know I said this was the Democratic candidate series, but I'm not ruling out that we might want to cover Bill Weld or Joe Walsh, too, running on the Republican side. But we'll see if that's really worthy of a show coming closer to, closer to true primary season. But like I said, tonight we're going to focus on Tom Steyer. I want to start tonight by having an admittal. I don't usually like to admit ignorance. Everybody's ignorant about some things, but you don't always necessarily want to admit it on a radio show or on the airwaves. But I will admit, before this guy jumped into the presidential race, I'd never heard of him. I mean, if you guys had, please chime in. If you think that I'm nuts for not hearing of him, or if you think, oh, I'd heard of him, but I get it. I'll admit I'd never heard of him. Never heard of him.
I actually had heard of him before him jumping in the race, only because of his essentially bankrolling political action committees in previous election cycles. Outside of that, that's all I had on him prior to his declaration for running back in 2019.
Yeah, and some people who follow, maybe this is because I don't have any money, maybe so I don't follow this stuff, but some people that follow news with banking stuff, maybe very well could have heard of him. Like I said, I admit it.
Well, yeah, if you follow investment banking, he's a billionaire. That's how he made his bazillions. Was in investment banking. Ironically, he essentially bankrolled a bunch of green causes in prior election cycles.
Yes, definitely.
He made a lot of his money on coal.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Oh, and we're gonna cover that. And when he first joined the race, and I did some minimal research, and some super PACs start popping up, and some of his other views and some of the businesses he ran. Well, then like, oh, I remember that. I remember that. But honestly, the name Tom Steyer, and Adam, have you heard of this? Had you heard of him beforehand?
I only heard of him through his little Never Trump campaign commercials, or that's basically it. Other than that, I've never heard of him prior to that.
I killed my TV a while ago, so I don't.
I probably heard of him far back as like 2012, to be entirely honest with you guys. That's probably when I first heard of him, but it was more of a certain talk radio or commentary figures were going off on rants about, billionaire donors on the left and influence in policy or whatever, and his name was dropped up in like the same breath as like a Bloomberg or a George Soros, the boogeyman extraordinaire.
Well, what many of us know about him now, 2012, that makes sense. That year would make sense. That's really around when he started kind of hitting the scene. So let's answer the question that I needed answered for me a little while ago, and that many of you may still need answer for you. But who is Tom Steyer? Who is he? Well, he's 62-year-old. They like to tell you he's from New York, but really he's more famous for what he did in California. This becomes an issue when you have guys like him or like Donald Trump. It used to be very easy to say that was something you said about a presidential candidate. What state's he from? Well, he's from Colorado. He's from Florida. He's from this. That used to be based on, well, he was congressman from Michigan. He was senator from Maryland. He was the governor of Arizona. But when you have guys that never were that have no political experience, it's hard to say where they're from. Born in New York, did most of his work and made most of his fortune in California, but I don't know that he really has a home state in the traditional sense of American politics, like many people have. He is married to Kat Tyler Steyer. They got 4 kids. And he is worth about $1.6 billion is around his net worth, which is a whole bunch of money. It's a ton of money. And we can elaborate on this more.
It's not Michael Bloomberg.
No,
money,
it's chump change compared to the other person that he keeps being compared to, right? I mean, to Michael Bloomberg. I mean, he is $1.6 billion. That's a good chunk of change, but it's...
What's Michael Bloomberg, like 60 billion?
Yeah, a little over 60 billion.
Yeah, Bloomberg's assets are not quite as liquid as Steyer's. Tom Steyer's a lot more liquid a lot more liquidity in his portfolio. But at the same time, Michael Bloomberg's overall net worth dwarfs that.
Perhaps percentage-wise, Steyer has more liquidity,
exactly.
But I promise.
If you wanna, I actually have data. I mean, it's compiled rather back on the 13th of this month, and overall campaign spending so far this year. If you guys want it, let me know. I've got it ready.
We do, but not yet. Not yet. I mean, $1.6 billion as a net worth is huge, but I would venture to say if you held a gun to Bloomberg's head and said, you have to get me $2 billion tomorrow, he could do it. He could actually come up with $2 billion, where Tom Steyer could not, with his net worth being 1.6. Because as Dorf pointed out, some of us broke people, sometimes when you hear the word net worth, you forget that that's not like what's in their wallet or how much is under their mattress or what's in their bank account. That's their net worth. That's everything put together. My net worth pretty much is like what's in my wallet. So so it doesn't much matter to me. He was, how would you guys say what Tom Steyer was? A bank manager? Is that what you'd say?
Hedge fund manager.
Hedge fund.
Okay.
hedge fund guy.
Yeah.
He's worked for places like Hellman and Friedman, for Goldman Sachs. He started Farallon Capital. He worked for the Beneficial State Bank. He went to Yale and Stanford, and he was on the
Board of Trustees for Stanford, which I guess is as close as you can get to a political position he's actually held, although he's been very politically active.
If you want to see, he's been very politically active, especially with his wallet, using opensecrets.org. Very powerful tool if you want to see who certain individuals donate to.
OpenSecrets.org. Okay, good.
Opensecrets.org. I believe it's .org. Hang on, let me confirm that real quick.
Cool. It's good for
OpenSecrets.org.
Some of you guys might want to check that out listening at home.
It's an open transaction ledger of all reportable campaign donations. So if candidates or campaigns get donations over, I forget what the exact threshold is, they have to publicly report who it is and who it's from. Tom Steyer gives a lot of those reportable donations to political action committees and campaigns throughout the United States. His 2018 record, how much money he gave to specific groups like Need to Impeach and Young Democrat Senator PAC and stuff like that. It's a lot of fucking money, man. It's more than we'll ever see in our lifetime.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and this is what he is most famous for, basically, is for bankrolling a lot of, activities, political activities, and a lot of candidates, especially since 2014. He is, a whole bunch of candidates have been, supplied money by him. He's in the state of California, California legislators, governors, senators, and congressmen all across the country, and definitely putting money into, an anti-Trump campaign. And he is a huge alternative energy advocate. If that is, I don't know if he qualifies as a one-issue candidate, but
he was
if
a one-issue guy.
Yeah, and if he was, it would
race.
be his main issue is alternative energy and the environment.
basically is what he's done.
He is one of these guys that has I'm sure you guys have all heard of the Giving Pledge. He's one of those guys that has made that Bill Gates and Warren Buffett thing, to give up a majority of your wealth before you die, or within your lifetime, to put it nicely.
He's definitely on board with that,
Well, he's pledged to anyway. We'll see
see if it happens. Probably will. He
came from a pretty wealthy family, not 1.6 billion wealthy, but pretty
wealthy family, Episcopalian
mom, Jewish dad. And what kind of makes his family famous is, I didn't know this until recently, his dad was a prosecutor on the Nuremberg trials.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
So, that little things like that kind of put your family and your name on the map, and that's definitely...
You said his dad was...
His dad was prosecutor on the Nuremberg trials.
That's cool.
Yeah. His dad was a Jew, not a practicing Jew, but he was Jewish, of Jewish descent.
God, you know what? I'm a little off track a little bit. Imagine being a Jewish lawyer, getting to do that though.
Yeah. Oh, pretty cool.
That's got to be like
pretty cool.
That's. I mean, it's like one of those like story of your life type
Right,
things.
right.
I mean,
right. It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's running for president now, but that'd be a tough act to follow from your old man. I mean, how do you top that?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But Tom Steyer is not Jewish. In fact, he's actually a practicing Episcopalian, which was his mother's religion, which he kind of took up later in life.
He likes Christmas, I guess.
Probably. Fairly devout Episcopalian, actually, from what it sounds like.
Hey, he likes Christmas.
Yeah, it does. Who doesn't? Christmas is awesome. I know a lot of Jewish people that like Christmas too. Christmas is cool.
Does Beck celebrate Christmas?
No, he doesn't. But he will do little things though. I know Bex gives out Christmas presents from time to time to people.
Sorry, off topic.
Yeah, very off topic. Radio for two.
Let's say you got time for breaking news in the sports world right now.
No.
No.
all-out brawl on the court between Kansas and Kansas State in men's basketball right now.
Oh, shit. All our viewers are just switching us off to turn that on right now.
It's about 20 minutes old at this point, but yeah, fighting the Kansas State game involving multiple people from both teams.
Well, good to know. This is not a sports show, though.
Yeah.
I know.
To steal from, I'm stealing from Drew Lane from the Drew and Mike show to say this is not a sports show. But
At Tom Steyer, I guess, he did make a lot of money in coal, which has been a criticism of his. I don't know. I feel like some of those criticisms at times are off. I mean, I don't know that defines you because you made money off, these energy things in the past. I don't know I'm not the guy that says that makes him a hypocrite per se, but he's given up his energy stocks and practices. But when he made that claim, then a lot of people said, yeah, not soon enough. You're technically still involved with them till 2030. And, he said, same with a lot of coal as Dorf had mentioned, big into coal. But he's a philanthropist is how, he would basically, I think, describe himself and how his supporters describe him. He brought computer training programs to India and, software things to Mexico. And he's been a big part of the Democratic Party for a long time. He supported Walter Mondale. He was a Bill Bradley supporter back in the day. Actually, not a Al Gore supporter. He was for Bill Bradley, but he was for John Kerry. He came out early for Hillary, but then jumped sides and went hard for Obama. But then also was a big-time Hillary donor and supporter when she did win the general. There is whispers that him and Obama aren't, although he did a lot for Obama, that there maybe some bad blood there, actually. He was kicked around after he dumped a whole bunch of money into this and a whole bunch of support for Obama. He was kicked around for the Obama cabinet right off the bat, and kind of, it seems like maybe he thought he was going to get one of those positions. And then he ended up being kind of kicked around for the cabinet basically for 8 straight years, but never did quite get in there. Right off the bat, they were talking about him as Treasury Secretary, which seems a good fit. And then later, they were talking a lot about him taking over as Energy Secretary, but neither one ever happened. He never did make it into that Obama cabinet. And there's a lot of conjecture there as to whether maybe they don't like each other personally or, some other reason why he was not put in there. But that is, in fact, conjecture. He founded the Next Gen Climate Now organization. And he spent over $10 million on the Impeach Trump campaign and commercials. I mean, he's been on that train from day one. Anything else you guys want to say about that real quick before we kind of change gears?
I'm good.
Yeah, I would say he's probably, he's still a billionaire, but he's one of the, definitely of the 2 billionaires in the race right now in the Democratic Party. He is definitely the more progressive of the two when compared to Michael Bloomberg. And he does stand on some, more progressive issues, or he does stand in line with some more progressive issues, but I guess I'll get to more later on.
Yeah, no, that's what we're going to jump into next. Is what are his issues? We know that he's big on climate change, so climate justice, however they want to call it. That's his big thing. He's huge. I'd say that's like 80% of who he is. But let's talk about what are his other stances?
Well, he's a liberal. he is a bleeding heart liberal. He is pro-choice. He is for a form of gun reform. He is, no war for trade. What else do we have here? Again, big on the environment, supports the Green New Deal. What else do we have here? 1.5 trillion in student loan debt is unacceptable. Keep schools open despite Republican demonetization. Opportunity Institute, cradle to career approach. He's against fracking. again, he's up and down liberal issues he will stand toe-to-toe with. No trade war with China, but stand up to them on an intellectual property. Trump tax plan and trade war are failures. So, I mean, he's right there. I mean, he is basically your prototypical liberal candidate.
Yeah, and
a little bit, probably, you know what, maybe a little bit further left than some of them. I think he's definitely further left than Joe Biden. He's further left probably than like a Pete Buttigieg. Probably not as far left as Elizabeth Warren, and definitely not as far left as Bernie Sanders. But I mean, he's again.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, you know, I mean, I like to use that word sparingly. I agree with that assessment. But maybe when it comes from Adam's mouth, it's not quite as an insult, as much of an insult. I know that Bernie is very left, but I would call Tom Steyer a leftist. I wouldn't call Bernie Sanders a leftist.
Well, leftist. I mean, technically speaking, a leftist is somebody that doesn't believe in free market capitalism.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also just part of a different culture that wants that is in some ways more anti-American as a whole. But that's, you know, kind of could be a different thing. I'm when I say that about Bernie, I'm complimenting him. But if many Bernie voters maybe wouldn't view that as a compliment.
Well, there's a lot of leftists out there that don't think that Bernie Sanders is a leftist. Some leftists out there think that Bernie Sanders is a liberal. So
and I mean, and we know Bernie Sanders is a socialist, and I give him credit for actually saying that instead of beating around the bush like a lot of socialists do, actually, or non-socialists do as well. Yeah, you mentioned that he's pro-abortion, and not only is he's
pro-choice.
He's pro-abortion, and but so much so actually that he will not allow his next-gen group to support
anyone who isn't.
Actually, he kind of
litmus test, if you will, you know.
Which that's another word that is like a naughty saying, litmus test. I actually don't have a problem with someone having a litmus test on something, whether it's pro-abortion or anti-abortion. He is not for Medicare for all, but he does want to move towards single payer eventually.
And you see, that's a very, very convenient campaign ideology to have, because that's something that Elizabeth Warren now wants to do. In the beginning, she was all about single payer healthcare, Medicare for all, but she changed her tune and was saying, "Oh well, I will go ahead and get on board with Medicare for all in my third to fourth year of my presidency," which at that point, you're running for
campaign time, baby.
Yeah, you're running for re-election again.
Right.
So you're that's not something you're going to be pushing. It's something that, it's somebody that's trying to have it both ways. And before we continue on,
sure.
I just want to say something else about the whole, Medicare for all thing when it comes to candidates saying, "Well, I support somebody wanting Medicare for all, if they want it." Only if they want it. If they don't want Medicare for all, then they don't have to have it. I know that's a popular position to take. It's a position that Pete Buttigieg has also taken as well. Medicare for all for those who want it. Or you can go ahead and if you like your health care plan, then you can go ahead and keep that too.
That sounds familiar.
Which it doesn't make sense again, because I don't know anybody out there that wants that likes health insurance or that wants, what people like is they like their doctor. They don't like their health insurance. And when somebody says, well, you could either have Medicare for all or you can keep your health insurance, what this eventually works itself out as is a way of means testing.
Yeah.
And that's not something that I don't think I sure as hell can't get on board. and I think it's setting it's setting this country up for something that isn't good, because if you do take Medicare for all as opposed to insurance, or insurance through the government, through the marketplace, through a government contract. If you go to the hospital, I mean, this is where you can run into that problem of long lines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you're going to go to all, I mean, what type of priority are you going to be on?
Dead last.
Yeah, when you're at a hospital and they're like, oh, who am I going to take? Am I going to take this guy who's on Medicare for all? Or am I going to take this lucrative government contract that we have here? We're going to take those guys first. And again, I think when you look at a candidate who takes that position, I think it shows their true colors in a lot of other aspects of their candidacy. So, yeah, that right there is something I definitely can't support Tom Steyer over.
Yeah, well, and I was gonna say, half jokingly, Adam, you were sounding a little bit like a Republican there, where it's almost like these systems are designed to fail in a way to bring forth single payer, which was a complaint a lot of people said about Obamacare
at the time.
Well, Obamacare is it's the prototypical neoliberal strategy to basically say, oh yeah, we want to give everybody Medicare for all, but we need to take these certain steps in order to do it.
Sure.
It's never going to amount to that. Never. If you're gonna do it, you need to do it. You don't sit here and have all these extra steps because, like I said, it just doesn't get anywhere, and it's not designed to get anywhere.
Sure.
Does anybody actually believe that somebody like Barack Obama, or even somebody like Tom Steyer or Pete Buttigieg, or even Elizabeth Warren wants to get rid of the health insurance industry? No, they don't.
No, they don't.
Not at all.
They really don't.
Not
You're
at
absolutely
all.
right.
So, I mean, it's just designed to lower the cost of healthcare for some people, but at the same time, you're still giving all these kickbacks and and rubbing the feet of big bad insurance companies. So
no, you're right, Adam. Adam, you had mentioned that he is for gun control. That is true. He wants. He has said that he wants to ban all assault weapons, which again, that's a very loose term. We've talked about that in the past. What exactly is an assault weapon? It's whatever they decide it is. But he wants to ban assault weapons. Has not ever said or not said that would include confiscation of those already out there. And he wants a universal background check. It's kind of hinted at universal background check for all guns, but that isn't really verified per se. He wants to raise the minimum wage, $15 an hour on a federal level.
I mean, that's something that I do like, and he does say something too about supporting not just a minimum wage or higher minimum wage, but a living wage, which is definitely better than a minimum wage. But again,
yeah, we'll see. This is another thing that will, like many things that presidential candidates say. When they say, I'm going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, I'm not quite sure how the president does that, and it's most kind of laughable to me when people who are in Congress say that as president, I will do this, when you look at them and say, no, you're actually in the part of government that does that now, and you're not doing it. The president doesn't do that, but hey, whatever. I know the president is a powerful position, and they do often push things through. In their own ways.
You may be wondering
what his views on foreign policy are. If you are, join the club, because he said virtually nothing on foreign policy. He's talked about immigration, which I guess can count as foreign policy, but
as far as foreign policy as a whole,
it's hard to find any position he has, if he does have them at all.
he does have a couple of things here, and this is according to ontheissues.org. Withdraw all U.S. troops from Afghanistan. That was from December 2019.
Okay, well, that's something.
Keep U.S. troops in northern Syria. He also said that in December 2019. And Trump foreign policy strategy is to react, not to think.
Okay, I mean, well, and we've definitely made it very clear that he is full on with Orange Man bad. I mean, if Donald Trump did it, it's definitely bad. Maybe he's right about that, maybe he's wrong about that, but that seems to be one of the driving forces behind his candidacy. He wants no deporting of people, of immigrants. He wants to give government assistance to immigrants, both legal and illegal, or more assistance to them. He here's something I agree with him on. This is not somebody that I'm trying to just cover him here, and not really, jump into how I feel too much, but something I actually agree with him. He his potential reforms for the criminal justice system. He wants release for those, for those who can't make bail. That doesn't mean instantaneous release, but there comes a point where you get arrested for something and you're basically just being held because you can't make bail. He wants to fix that. He wants more parole for convicts. I don't agree with that, not because I don't want them to be hurt. I just don't like the parole system. So I kind of feel like I feel like that's kind of a thing I kind of like, but if his idea of, it hasn't really been talked about too much. If that just means he wants to, let some people out who have committed nonviolent crimes, I'm all for it. But if it's just a stretching of the parole system, which just gets people just stuck in this system for their entire lives, that to me doesn't really help much of anything. But again, that's just kind of me throwing my own stuff out there. He does double down on saying that Donald Trump definitely took money from foreign leaders. Where a lot of candidates have kind of said we don't know, or maybe he has definitely doubled down on that. He worked hard to get the death penalty repealed in California. Hasn't said much on the federal level, but judging by how hard he fought against it in California, it's pretty obvious that he's pretty staunchly anti-death penalty. And one thing that's pretty unique to him, actually, as a candidate, is that he has come out with a little template, if you will, for what he calls his 5 rights. And his 5 rights to him are voting, a clean environment, a complete education, living wage, and good health. Some of those, they're all things that everybody wants, right? But some of that stuff is, some of those things are kind of more radical than they sound when you're getting into an idea of, so we should, have basically public education should be preschool through, master's degree. Do people want that? I don't know if that's a great idea or not. I know it won't be cheap. Living wage, that's could be a good thing. I don't know what that means, though. Does that just mean trying to jack up the minimum wage? I don't know if that's what that means or not. I don't think that helps, honestly. But that's just me. That's something that's been debated for years. Good health, clean environment, those are, kind of go along with his healthcare and his environmental stances, which we know. Voting, I think, is kind of more about the potential voting fraud or voting right to vote type things. But not really elaborated on too much necessarily. But hey, he hasn't been in there that long and hasn't always been able to speak much in debate. So his some of his views not being out there might not be totally his fault either. Although he does have a website and could maybe be a little more, he could maybe be a little bit more obvious on some of those than he is. would you guys? Is he something? I'm kind of struggling here before we get into how he can potentially do in this election. I'm kind of struggling with this guy as a candidate because, quite frankly, I kind of don't get him. You know, I don't really get it. I would get it if he was the guy with the big wallet jumping in to kind of see what he can do and make some waves and maybe jump in and be the guy. But as we discussed earlier, Bloomberg could buy and sell this guy. So,
well, Josh, hang on there. Look at the campaign spending, campaign year to date. As of right now, well, this is as of the 13th. So these numbers are a few days old.
Yeah, I have 70 million so far on Tom 2020. Is that what basically?
That is nowhere close to what it is currently. Okay. All right, campaign year to date or campaign cycle to date spending as of the 13th. Bloomberg at 196.2, so that's 196 million. 200,000 ish. Tom Steyer at 123.8. Third place, Buttigieg at 22.8.
Okay, and this I don't think this is adversarial.
He spent more than the rest of if you don't count Bloomberg, he spent more than the rest of the candidates combined.
I got that. I'm with you. This is actually we're not on opposite sides of this topic.
Here's my thought. Why I struggle to take him seriously is I think he's only here so he can run all the issue ads he normally just bankroll through third parties, where he can specifically say things, as a candidate, and pay the candidate rates because there's no restrictions on what you can say as a candidate, and you get a cheaper ad buy rate when you're a candidate. I think he will stay in it until the convention, and will continue to run ads. And then we'll shift his focus to buying ads through, PACs and different party, bankrolling the party and party making activities. After that, I think the same thing of Mike Bloomberg. I think Mike Bloomberg's a little bit more serious, but Tom Steyer is just here to take advantage of the discount and the extra freedom of speech, let's call it, that being a candidate affords him. He's not here to
do you think he
win
has
the thing. He's just here to influence it.
You just answered my question. So that this is you believe that this is and I'm not disagreeing. I'm actually kind of with you on this, but that this is an issue candidacy that he has no hopes of.
Oh, he
actually
would be
being
doing
president of the United
all
States.
the same. He'd be spending all the same amount of money on this campaign, just through different PACs and donations to individual candidates. Behind the scenes, if he wasn't running this year, like he has the last couple cycles,
That's another.
he gets better rates on TV time because he's a candidate, and he isn't. He can say vote for or vote against, or all the gloves and restrictions are taken off because he's not funneling that money and through a political action organization. You could specifically use action phrases such as vote for, vote against, candidate X, candidate Y, issue X, issue Y, and you're not going to get in trouble with the FCC.
No, that's a very good theory, very sound theory. That makes very much sense to me.
I mean, he spent over $120 million to get 1%. I mean, quite honestly, if he was serious, he would have dipped his toe in the water, spent 20, see where that would have got him, realized he's not gaining any ground, and then bowed out at that point if he was actually a serious candidate, because he's not like he's old enough where it's this election of the highway, much like it is Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, where they've got nothing. There is no tomorrow for them. If they don't win now, they're done. They're essentially going to age out. Tom Steyer's in his early 60s. He's got essentially 2 or 3 more times he could try it. There's no reason to blow your load now. If you were actually a serious candidate and you actually wanted to live at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue eventually.
I mean, for lack of a better term, though, I mean, he's kind of blowing his load now. I mean,
that's cashed out a lot. I mean, he spent essentially 10% of his.
Let me jump to this last.
Net wealth.
Let me jump back to that last point we're trying to make here, Dorf, before we go. Before we go too far off on it. But my point in saying that I don't get him, I don't really get what he's trying to do. I mean, what you said makes sense. That's that he wants to dump money into this, so this is a better way to expedite that goal. But to say that, when I say that Bloomberg can buy him, sell him, and then you say, well, but he spent more than Bloomberg. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This guy's spent 10% of his net worth right now to not be as popular as Bloomberg. Bloomberg could have spent that. He doesn't need to. He jumped in and is...
Bloomberg would have spent, to get to the same level of percentage of net worth, he'd be at like $6 billion.
That's what I mean. Bloomberg was where Steyer is just by entering the race. He has that name recognition. He has that following already. Bloomberg was getting 1% in straw polls before he was in the race. So he's got that. He can throw some major money at this if he wants to later. And but the idea that he's not really a serious candidate for president, that makes more sense than most things, quite frankly. That this is an issue-based candidacy, and his issues basically being the environment 2 and 1, Trump sucks. Basically are his
orange man bad and green policy good.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, for the most part, I guess.
So, we're kind of discussing it already, but the next question I'd say, what do you guys think? What are the chances this guy has in these primaries? Any at all?
None.
Absolutely none.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like the fourth pre-planned question that's supposed to be the final question of the show. We can just go, the final question that I want to kind of end all this series with is, what are his chances against Donald Trump? Let's pretend that we didn't just say this guy has 0 chance of winning the primaries, and ask the question, can this guy beat Donald Trump? Well, if it happened to be Steyer v. Trump, is that a Trump landslide? Does Steyer have a chance?
I think he has a better chance than a lot of people in this field, is because he has no political baggage. Essentially, he's never held elected office before. About all you can try and smear him with is who he's donated to before, which that gets in too much into nuance and in the weeds. Joe Blow, John Q. Public doesn't understand that, so that's not something you really tar and feather him with. So if he were able to maneuver his way through a primary, I think he's got a shot. You can kind of say the same thing for Pete Buttigieg, because he's he was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. There's not much you can smear a guy who ran a town of like 110,000 people.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Dorf. He's a guy. Yes, he doesn't have any political baggage, but the work against him would be, well, you don't have any political baggage. You don't have any experience. You don't.
Oh yeah, he doesn't have any experience.
Yeah, but then again, Donald Trump didn't have any experience too when he.
But he does now.
But he does now. But again, though, that doesn't work. For a new candidate like him.
That doesn't overcome the incumbent advantage. So
no, it doesn't.
An incumbent with a strong economy doesn't lose, and assuming that still holds true in November, it's going to take a minor miracle to have the entirety of the field to be Donald Trump, because just historically, good economy, incumbents don't lose.
Hey, you guys, I said it before, I'll say it again. Ever since 2016 happened, I think all bets are off.
Oh, absolutely.
When it comes to the next election after that, I don't think anybody can sit there and gauge and confidently predict what's going to happen. It forever comes out on the Democratic side of things. If it's somebody like Tom Steyer, if it's somebody like Bernie Sanders, maybe if it's somebody like Elizabeth Warren too. The thing is, though, is what we have seen before is we have seen a Joe Biden type lose to Hillary or to Donald Trump. We have seen a Pete Buttigieg type lose to Donald Trump. That's something that we've seen before. Have we seen Tom Steyer lose to Hillary Clinton or to Donald Trump? Not necessarily. Same with Bernie Sanders. Same thing with Elizabeth Warren. So, I if he managed to maneuver his way through the Democratic primary, I'm not about to go and say that no, Trump's going to win this thing in a landslide. Not in the least bit.
But I think we can all agree that if the Democrats shift towards this idea that we're not going to run one of these, one of these main candidates we're looking at, we're going to run some rich guy who's, akin to the outsider businessman that Donald Trump was, their guy's going to be Bloomberg, not Steyer.
No, yeah, probably. I mean, you're probably right there, but I don't think you're trading off, again, at the end of the day, too much difference between Tom Steyer and Michael Bloomberg. I think when it comes to actually, implementing your policy, not a whole lot's going to be different. Go ahead, Dorf. I'm sorry.
Well, here's the kind of thing with Michael Bloomberg that makes him kind of different from Tom Steyer. Both of them are trying to be to buy their influence into the cycle. Michael Bloomberg hasn't spent a dime in Iowa or New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'd have to look into South Carolina. I don't think he spent any money there either. Tom Steyer has spent time, money, and effort in those early states. Michael Bloomberg isn't even, he's just going to, privately, fund through his own wallet his way to Super Tuesday and hope to clean up there. He's not even trying to get down to the mud and fight with these other candidates for those first couple states in the primary process. He's just, he's not interested in getting started. He's just playing a more strategic game, which tells me Michael Bloomberg is serious. He's kind of realized it's too late to invest and try and make up ground in those states that overall, in the overall picture, don't mean much when you can just spend your way out of needing new donors as momentum is built post, the first couple rounds of primaries. So Michael Bloomberg, to me, is serious. He's not
very
only
serious.
trying to spend a bunch of money to say, to at the discounted rate to say Orange Man bad, but he's also trying to play to win here.
I think
or at least be a kingmaker when it comes to the convention, where on second and third ballots he can kind of tell the delegates that are given to him to, hey, Bernie has promised me X, Y, and Z. Go vote for Bernie on ballot 2.
I think this is a huge problem, though, too, Dorf, is the way that these two guys, Bloomberg or Steyer, is able to just go in there and spend, and develop your candidacy based off of that. And I mentioned this last week. I think it was off the air, but I am by no means a fan of Kamala Harris or Cory Booker. But when you're able to stay in the race over two relatively well-known sitting U.S. senators, I think that there's a problem with that, with somebody being able to buy their way into an election.
You're talking about I'm with you on Harris and Booker, on disliking them, especially Kamala Harris, but you're talking about two people with a machine. They actually have a grassroots organization. They had a group. They had a campaign.
Yeah, and they bowed out because they just couldn't fund it anymore.
Right.
I mean, it's
where Bloomberg, in my opinion, he's obviously a smart guy. He knew an election was coming up this year. This didn't spring on him. He jumped in very late in comparison. It's not late historically, for joining these things, but it is late for the way the campaigns are run now, the primary season is run now.
Yeah, he wasn't watching the Knicks one night and said, you know what, I think I might run for president.
Right. This is something he's been kicking around for a long time. This is strategic, as Dorf pointed out, and he joined the race when he joined the race on purpose. I think Dorf theorized that he's going to dump it into Super Tuesday. Maybe that's good. I think
that's actually where he.
Hang on, let me finish here, man. I think he's going for a brokered election myself. I think a lot of elites within the Democratic Party or on the Democratic side want a brokered election for several different reasons. And I think he's part of that machine that is pushing that. Whether it's for him, I tend to think he is serious about wanting to be president of the United States, but I question whether or not he's not just trying to push this to a point of brokered election. That's what I tend to think. You could do that with a big Super Tuesday push too. It doesn't have to be one or the other. What I theorized and what Dorf theorized aren't necessarily at odds with each other. They could be right on par with each other, actually. But I think that Mike Bloomberg wants a brokered election, and I think he wants it decided at the convention. But we'll see. Tom Steyer, on the other hand, I kind of tend to agree with Dorf. I don't really think he's serious. I think he just wants to dump a bunch of money into this thing and put his name out there and try to sway the election, more anti-Trump than pro-Steyer.
Jesus Christ. I mean, it's just so ridiculous that somebody, basically has that money just to throw around like that.
Well, and another thing Steyer has said, too, that I've neglected to say when we were discussing his issues is that he says he is against campaign finance reform, against the McCain-Feingold bill, but he also says that he acknowledges that, he still is doing the super PACs, and he is against it, but he is taking full advantage of the rules, which, by the way, to me, I don't like it when people say that that's hypocritical, because he doesn't choose the system. He's working within the system. But he has said that he actually opposes what he's doing, in essence. That he thinks what he's doing should be illegal, which is a strange stance to take in some ways, but I guess you're trying to work within the system, I guess. I don't.
Yeah, it's
a bit strange, but
yeah.
Do you guys have any other thoughts on Mr. Steyer?
I really don't. It's just
He's
I
not
said,
serious, and that's about all I'll say.
I mean, it's like I said before. It's frustrating to have a somebody like him running for president where you can just buy your way into it. I don't like that concept. And wow, look at another billionaire has bought their way into the election, and I don't know. I think that's something that I don't think it's something that's talked about too much in how much something like that has influenced,
Yeah.
something like this. So
No, I agree, and I don't see. I don't really understand how, with the stances that run-of-the-mill Democrats hold, I don't see why you get behind a guy like Tom Steyer.
I mean, I can appreciate some of his, like I said, I can appreciate some of his stances on various issues, but at the end of the day, he's another 1% billionaire who's probably going to look, who's probably going to be looking out for, maintaining that status quo.
Mm-hmm.
So.
No, a lot of his, and easy for me to say this, but a lot of his stances are kind of along the lines of, well, easy for you to say. You're a billionaire, and you have all this expendable income to just throw around, and if I don't, a lot of times I don't like it when people say this, because I do think people should be rewarded or commended for good things they do, but it's a lot easier to be a philanthropist when you're a billionaire.
Yeah.
I guess it's better than being a billionaire and not being a philanthropist, I guess. But that is what it is. Do you guys want to pick on air who we will do next, or do you guys want to decide that later and announce it later?
Well, I was gonna say that if you want to talk about somebody who is lower than Tom Steyer, because I think there's probably a couple people lower than Tom Steyer. I mean, Michael Bennett, he's still technically in the race.
He's in the race still.
John Delaney still in the race?
Yes,
Delaney and Patrick are both.
still in the race as well.
I mean, is Tulsi lower than Tom Steyer?
Let me pull up a RCP aggregator real quick.
Okay, because I mean,
Yeah.
Tom Steyer was in the last debate.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's made the cut on the last several. He wasn't in all of them, but some of them he actually, I know for sure at least one he made the cut, but still wasn't in it.
Yeah.
Okay, RCP aggregate current lowest. Tom Steyer lower than Cory. That is Cory Booker, but he's officially dropped out. Gabbert and Bennett. Everybody else is ahead of him.
Okay.
Let's do Tulsi next.
Okay, we could do Tulsi.
Tulsi Gabbard next.
Sure, that'd be good. We will do her next. I don't.
No, we have not discussed this yet. If it will be the very next episode of XCast, but she will be the next episode in the Democratic candidates series.
And I have a feeling she's still going to be in the race. So
I think so,
I
too.
don't think she's going to be dropped. That's again.
If she's out by the time we're there, oh well, we missed her, and
Yeah,
on
we'll
to the
do
next
somebody
one.
else, but I
Yeah.
don't think she will be.
No, I think she'll still be in the race.
And
I'd really like to cover Andrew Yang too before he's still in, but we'll see. We there's a good chance we won't get to them all, to all 12 of them, like we said before. But we are gonna definitely, and there will come a point where we'll just say, all right, let's cover the big dogs now.
God, hopefully we don't get to Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, but yeah. So actually, Deval Patrick is still technically lower.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Deval Patrick.
Yeah, he is still in.
Can we skip him?
We probably let's.
Yeah, Delaney. I think if they're below Gabbard, I think we can pass.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see how it pans out. If we cover everybody and they're still around, maybe we'll do one. But we shall see. I gotta imagine we're gonna have some more drops here, maybe even some more before Iowa.
All right.
I'm thinking.
At this point, Iowa's 2 weeks out. People, if you're in it still, you're in it through Iowa.
I don't know about that. We'll see. Maybe. I've seen people drop out 72 hours before Iowa before. It does happen. Go home early. Take the last of your cash. Take your wife out to dinner. Come on, you gotta.
Wait, can you do anything with it? Can you use that money for
I'm pretty
dinner?
sure once your campaign's over, you're free to kind of use that money for whatever.
Kind of. You can put it this way. Did your
Usually
wife
it gets donated to the party or something.
Yeah. Did your wife help out on the campaign? You can. Probably did. You could take her and a couple other people
I
out
don't
to
know.
dinner.
Let's see what Beto did with his war chest, because he dropped out when he had quite a bit of money left around.
Yeah.
He's probably going to be funding
Well,
a.
The thing is, too, they're politicians, so you can be certain of one thing: whatever you're not allowed to do with it,
They're doing
they'll
it.
probably do it.
Yeah.
That's not exclusive to either political party either. That is that's just politician. But hey,
this has been
the first episode of our Democratic candidate series. Hope it was informative. Hope it was good, and we covered a guy that isn't a huge part of it yet, but we're going to get to some of the top dogs as the series continues. So thanks for tuning in, everybody.
All right. See you guys next time.